With no real signs of life anywhere else in universe, how fortunate we are to live on this fantastic planet, full of life and with breathtaking beauty. And still we exploit and mistreat it as if we are planning to leave, ignoring the needs and the rights of future generations. The question for us now is, can we change the course and redefine the limits for our life here on Earth? For this we need good advice, so I turn to Albert Einstein, who said, "The future is not a gift, it is an achievement." We can probably agree that the quick economic development since the 1950s has improved our lives, in particular here in the global north. But this has also come with very high climate and environmental impacts, especially in the global south. We have known for decades that our greenhouse gas emissions cause climate change, and still we have let the CO2 levels in the atmosphere continue to increase. And by cutting down forests and polluting the oceans, we've also reduced the planet's CO2 absorption capacity. And as a result, temperatures are rising and extreme weather events are increasing, with droughts, fires and floods causing death and destruction also here in Europe. And our wasteful lifestyle have also required a lot of materials of different kinds, about 100 billion tons per year. And our efforts to decrease the resource use and minimize is not working very well. So this over and misuse of resources has resulted in that we are now facing a triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss and pollution. And we also breached 7 of the 9 planetary boundaries, which increases the risk for significant or irreversible environmental changes. The alarming situation is complicated further by the related social and geopolitical impacts, where climate migration, increasing inequalities, and competition for resources is causing polarization, extremism and wars, which is diverting our attention from the many pressing challenges we are facing. So, more than good advice, we must remember Einstein's words that the measure of intelligence is the ability to change. With all the knowledge we have and all the alarming impacts we see, why have we not changed the course? The response is economy stupid, as someone said, where governments during the last 50 years have promoted economic growth at any cost and impact, guided by economists saying that this is the only path to prosperity. The economic growth has relied on our overconsumption, driven by the misconception that buying new things is the path to happiness, but also to communicate identity and status. This has allowed companies to continue to produce newer, better, cooler products that convince us to throw away and buy new, thereby sustaining the growth and increasing the profits, bonuses, and shareholder returns. The neoliberal market and supply side economics have pushed governments to deregulate, to privatize, to promote free trade, and to lower taxes, allowing companies to exploit the planet and the people for increased profits. It's now increasingly clear that this continued push for economic growth is no longer sustainable. And it's also argued that growth has reached levels where it no longer improves well-being. This is not a new conclusion. Already in 1972, in the book Limits to Growth, the Club of Rome predicted that unless we changed growth trends, we would face a sudden and uncontrollable decline, both in population and in industrial capacity. So why have we then continued on this path of growth for so long? Einstein gave a clue when he said that the three great forces rule the world: stupidity, fear, and greed. And while stupidity and fear maybe have a role in this, I think the guilty one is greed, which has driven companies to increase growth and profits with no or little consideration to the environmental and climate impacts of their operation. A good example is the oil industry, which during the last 50 years have generated enormous profits, almost $3 billion per day. And still they have used only a very small share of this to develop or to roll out renewable energy alternatives, where the profits are much lower, or to support mitigation and adaptation to climate change. Instead, these profits have been used to enrich top managers and shareholders, and to misinform the public and bribe politicians. With recent developments in the US and the poor outcome of the COP30 in Brazil as very telling examples. This greed and wealth hoarding has not only reduced governments' abilities to support those in need, but also created inequalities where the richest 1% now owns more than 95% of the world's population, while more than 700 million people cannot eat enough. The social impact of such inequalities has been studied by Lou Kemp at Cambridge University in the rise and the fall of 400 societies over 5,000 years. And he found that increasing inequalities always contributed to societal collapse, driven by a dominating, enriched, status-obsessed elite that extracted more and more resources and wealth from the land and from the people, which made societies fragile due to infighting, corruption, land degradation, and poor health. This sounds a bit familiar, right? And it brings to mind Einstein's words that the economic anarchy of capitalism is the real source of the evil. So, drastic change will likely come, either following our decision and design or forced by climate, ecosystem, and societal collapse. Which means that Einstein was right when saying we need a substantially different manner of thinking if mankind is to survive. This tells us to go on from the current greed and profit-driven capitalist economy to a people and planet-centered economy, where we cooperate for the common good and prioritize social outcomes over private profits. We could call this a capitalist our economy, signaling that we will co-create and share both value and opportunity among all those who generate it. Central in this transition is to shift our focus from material possessions to sufficiency and well-being, aiming for quality and purpose in life, in work, in relations, etc. For this, we must recalibrate our minds and our norms from greed to generosity, from competition to cooperation, from quantity to quality, and from having to being. As Einstein, we will then see that many of the things we can count don't count, and many of the things we cannot count really count. To deliver on this transition, we will need wise but also virtuous leaders taking action on many different fronts. For example, supporting a more circular and regenerative use of resources, and supporting activities that are more labor than resource intensive and that contribute to diversifying and greening local economies and energy systems. Important also for governments is to ensure that financial systems and new technological developments like AI better serve all people and the planet. And to leave no one behind, steps must be taken to reduce inequalities and to ensure that there is equal access to basic services. This will require both regulatory and tax measures that incentivize sustainable and fair practices and that limit financial speculation and debt-driven money creation. Since challenges and opportunities vary a lot in different parts of the world, joint efforts will be needed to make global trade more fair, allowing also low-income countries to develop sustainable economies, and to better measure the societal progress. Governments must change the GDP for a well-being indicator, such as the Human Development Index or the Genuine Progress Indicator. To be able to deliver on all this, leaders must remember Einstein's words that we cannot solve today's problems using the same mentality that created them. And if and when needed also that failure is success in progress. While good leaders and governments are important in this transition, crucial is for all of us to become change makers and act as careful resource users, focusing on our needs and not our wants, as caretakers, helping all people and the planet to prosper and flourish, as concerned citizens, questioning any unjust or unsustainable action or decision, and as caring influencers, raising awareness about the need for and the benefit of change. In all this, we must rethink the way we live, eat, work, travel, and consume, reducing the need for oversized homes, unsustainable, unhealthy food, underused spaces and cars, and short-lived products. For this, we must opt for circular designs and business models that extend the life of products and also allow us to switch from ownership to usership and sharing, and also to recover materials at the end of life. We should also support cooperatives of different kinds where both responsibility and value is shared, and consider co-working and co-living options that contribute to local and participatory economies. In all this, we must, as Einstein, strive not to be a success, but to be of value to each other and to the planet, remembering that our future will not be a gift, but an achievement, which depends on our collective commitment to change. So, let's go out and be change makers and treat this fantastic planet as if we are going to stay. Thank you.